especially in the United States, through policy research and programs that promote better public understanding about Taiwan and its people. To realize the vision and mission of GTI, our starting lineup of programs include the Global Taiwan Brief, a biweekly publication offering expert analyses on issues related to Taiwan policy, U.S.-Taiwan relations, and Taiwan-China ties using primary materials, which has also just been released today. Because it comes out bi-weekly on Wednesdays. We also have a public seminar series, and this is one of our public seminars. So that we have a public seminar series that addresses Taiwan's role in the broader policy debate. It's going to focus on both traditional and non-traditional issues. So we don't want to just look at security and military discussions, but we want to focus on a wide range of issues, including cultural policy reforms. And we also have an annual symposium, which is a flagship program, which is our flagship program, and it's an annual symposium on U.S. policy. We also host a number of podcasts, including GTI Insights, which consist of brief timely interviews with a wide range of policy experts, including academics, government officials, and journalists. Taiwan Security Review, which explores topics related to Taiwan security, and also Taiwan Salon, which is the podcast that I host, which focuses on soft power and cultural policy. All right, so today I'd like to introduce our event. So Taipei has been taking steps to enhance Taiwan's soft power resources. One of these steps has been the establishment of the Taiwan Creative Content Agency, also known as TAICA. This has allowed the development of a more coordinated strategy when it comes to nurturing Taiwan's cultural and creative industries. And cooperation between Netflix and TAICA has led to more Taiwanese productions making it onto the world stage. However, when it comes to international recognition, Taiwan's soft power continues to lag behind its contemporaries, such as South Korea and Japan. Additionally, Taiwan's efforts to market its culture abroad have been criticized by many as ineffective, in part due to a lack of coordination between government administrations and the absence of clear messaging. In light of these concerns, this seminar will include a discussion of some of the most important topics in Taiwan soft power scholarship, including current trends in Taiwan's cultural policy, the role of democratic values in Taiwan's international outreach, methods of measuring soft power. In doing so, it will provide insights into the challenges and opportunities Taiwan faces as it seeks to expand its international cultural. And we have a very amazing group of panelists today. I'm really excited to hear all of the presentations. So we have Adrienne Wu, who is from the Taiwan Association of Cultural Policy Studies, as well as the National Taiwan University of Arts. We also have Gary Rawnsley, who is from the University of Lincoln, and Irene Wu from Georgetown University. And myself, I forgot to introduce myself. I am a research associate at GTI, and my name is Adrienne Wu. So we will start off with our first speaker, Dr. Liu. So Dr. Liu is a professor at the Graduate School of Arts Management and Cultural Policy at the National Taiwan University of Arts. He's also the executive director of the Taiwan Association of Cultural Policy Studies and the editor-in-chief of Culture, Policy Management and Entrepreneurship, which is in both Chinese and English. Who is also the president of the Taiwan Association of Cultural Policy Studies from 2015 to 2021. So as you can see, he's been wearing a lot of different hats when it comes to cultural policy. So he was also invited to serve as an ENCATC International Correspondence Board member between 2015 and 2021, as well as the advisory board member of ANCER. Liu is also the author and editor of Taiwan's International Cultural Relations, Culture as a Method, Reorient an East Asian Approach on Cultural Policy and Cultural Governance, the Mapping of Cultural Rights in Taiwan, and Global Cities, Cultural Governance and Cultural Strategies, art, cultural events, festivals, and cultural images. So I'd like to give the floor over to Dr. Liu.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Adrienne, thank you for the invitation to the Global Institute, Global Taiwan Institute. It's coming to the Taiwan election again. So since the full president candidate cannot come to DC, so I come. But it's just but as a Rawnsley organization. Today, I would like to talk about Taiwan's soft power and also its so-called civil activated democracy in the past 10 years. I prepared quite a lot of slides, 70 slides. Hopefully, I will finish about 50 by then, but I will try to start about 1 minute. Since I cannot see it, I have to with my phone. Please, I'm just going to help me. All right, next, please. So I took the topic as Taiwan culture as a method. So I explained why I use Taiwan as a method. Taiwan is located at a marginal geographical position in East Asia, and then next to Australia area and Asia Pacific. As I say, it's marginal. It's not any continent, and also its political reality does not allow it to really fully address itself. So we need to be up for something, some different models, which I could like an alternative model. But as I will explain later, that's sort of non-dominating, non-aggressive civil activity model of country democratization and country democracy later might become a history. Today's global. The question, however, is will this young country democracy in Taiwan, East Asia sustain for 10, 20 years? And also, if we are going to address Taiwan as a method, what sort of vocabulary, sort of discourses, what sort of values we actually expose to society? The second key concept, I say culture as a method. By saying culture as a method, I mean we have to put culture as centrality of people's everyday life. Because if we are going to talk about culture is going to make its impact and culture is influential, then culture cannot be limited to arts. It cannot be limited to textbooks. Culture has got to become much wider concept, so that it is to be placed and positioned at the center of people's everyday life, and also at the center of political economy. So today I'm going to present a bit about how people in Taiwan in the past 10 years try to use culture, trying to address culture because it's a center for the economy. So it's very brief stage for Taiwan's history after World War II. So the key thing is that the smart from almost authoritative censorship country into a more democracy in 2000. And now in 2020s, we're looking forward that Taiwan is moving into a more civil activated society and also cultural democracy, which is also trying to maintain its participative cultural governance in public sphere. So I'm going to focus mainly on the past 10 years, 2010 to 2020s. So a couple important events that does go down to the past 10, 12 years. So as I listed here, in 2011, that's 100 year anniversary for the ROC's mistake. So on that year, the president decided that we're going to celebrate it for 100th anniversary. However, there was an event or the Dreamers event. It's a performing drama, but it spent about 300 million dollars for about 2 weeks. So there was this alleged misallocation of country budget. Then it brought aroused quite serious concern. And then because of that, in 2012, unprecedentedly, 3 president candidates debated on culture policy solely for 2 hours online, broadcasting to the nation. I think we probably don't find it anywhere. When you go, there's 3 president candidates debate about culture for 2 hours online, which is, I think, then 2013 and 14, there's a public sign between Taiwan and China. Then because of this cross-trade trade service also aroused a lot of controversies. So at that time, the artists and culture practitioners were very conscious about the sort of trade in service, for instance, in films and also in publishing. My some sort of self-regulation in Taiwan, because if you want to export or publish in China or to have film published in China, you need to be censored first. So every single film, every single book is going to be censored. But if you only look at the market, of course, mainland China's market is much bigger than the Taiwanese one. So once there is a cross-trade service agreement, that might prove authors and film producers trying to avoid issues that the mainland Chinese does not like to listen. So that sort of self-censorship and self-regulation might be imposed by the industry itself. So that causes a lot of controversies. That's why we introduce this kind of impact assessment scheme, trying to say we do not only assess the economic value of country industry, but also the content value, the intrinsic value of industry. And then this accumulatively comes to the following National Congress in 2016 and 17, 2008 Cultural White Paper, 2009 Cultural Fundamental Act. I'm going to introduce a bit. Next. So I'll give you some photos here. I'm trying to show you that the artists and cultural practitioners in Taiwan do not only care about artists' work, they care about environmental protection, they care about safeguarding the cultural heritage, they care about freedom of speech, they care about trade relations. And what you can see here, in 2014, the sunflower movement symbolized about 500,000 people demonstrated on the street against the hip-hop. But we, as a civil organization, we started to make our effort earlier. In 2011, we started to organize seminars, and public seminars, and trying to talk about cultural right and the policy. Next one. We also issued citizens' public declaration when it comes to the mayor election. Next one. And we established the association in 2015, trying to do cultural advocacy and also promote copyright. Next one. As you can see, we organize quite a lot of events and seminars and workshops trying to assemble the citizens to discuss public space about public affairs. Next one. And then we have partnerships with all different sorts of this one. Also the different association of visual art, performing art, documentary union, also the different cultural organizations, etc. So we run the department to really listen to the civil groups, how they trace their cultural rights. Next one. So in 2016, we're trying to ask the Ministry of Culture to hold the National Cultural Congress. And before that, we invited the Minister of Culture to come to our campus to face the civil groups. So she originally planned to give talk for about 15 minutes and then open up for Q&A for another 15 minutes. So I was there, and after 15 minutes, I say, well, any question from the floors? You see from the audience there, you see hands everywhere. So the minister says, well, don't worry, I'm in a rush, I'll stay for a bit longer. So she then took questions for 2.5 hours, answering to the audience. And then she realized that there was the dynamism and also the anxiety accumulated in civil society that they need to hold up the National Congress. Yes. And we also have different local cultural congress in Taiwan, in front of the temple. Next one. And for heritage groups, protection of local heritage. Next one. As you can see, in 2017, eventually, National Congress was held. Next one. So there were several important values to be addressed. Cultural citizen, participatory cultural governance, deliberative thinking, and public participation, diversity, and equity. The three main goals of the Cultural Congress. One is the Congress itself to have public forum. Second, we want to accumulate, we want to converge senses for civil advocacies for cultural white paper. And if there is a necessity there, we would legislate for Cultural Fundamental Act. So there's three key things that we want to address in the next one. We collaborated with the Ministry of Culture. We understand very well that we do not only want the Cultural Congress people come to speak up and make their voice heard. We want their voice to be adopted. We want their opinion to actually enter into the system, enter into the mechanism. That's why we spend quite a lot of time negotiate with the government, Ministry of Culture, to set up a mechanism for National Cultural Congress. So you see, task forces were organized. There were researchers under the 6 different tests. There were mechanism. There were co-decision mechanism there for between the civil society and also the government. Next one, please. We also do surveys for analysis for cultural opinions. Next one. So we start to also negotiate the agenda with the government. We set up the issue that we want to be discussed. Next one. Then we started the local forum, adopting the deliberative democracy process. Next one. And we also open up an online petition to allow citizens to propose their petition online. So if you can have, you can accumulate about 500 votes for the issue, then that issue will be entered into National Cultural Congress. Next one. So eventually, we got about 3,100 people participated. There were different kind of meeting lasted for 148 hours, involving 777 local officials coming. We eat up about 2,871 lunchbox. We transcribed about 1.1 billion records, words of records, and we broadcasted online for every station. Next one. So all those are open data, you can still access them. Okay. Next one. So let's eventually come to the National Cultural Congress. Next one. The next one. So the president, the prime minister, and minister also, they all join. Next one. So what's being achieved? Next one. I said the records of proceedings, and then the white paper and the act was all legislated. Next one. So the sequel, after 2017, there were quite a lot of Congress being held. Next one. And then we have the legislation of Fundamental Act of Culture. So its functions for all their cultural values, principles, set up of cultural institutions, etc. organism. So the next one, the concept is to flip governance. Yeah, the upside down. Yeah, next one. So we want the government to take the life through of citizens first, and then implement the culture policy. Next one. The cash on for the mayor selection, and we also monitor the implementation of the white paper. Next one. The citizen discussion goes on. Next one. And then in 2022, last year, by law, the government has got to assemble another national congress. So it happened. Although we are not really satisfied with it, because we don't have the original mechanism for explain how it is. Next one. So it also extended to the local. Next one. So we try to connect the experience with the international indicators for assessing its implementation. Next one. And next one. Next one. Right. So there was a couple of white paper in the local city. Next one. And discussions by a different party. It's nationalist party. Okay. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yes. So I was trying to say in Taiwan, we then started this kind of network technology of governance. At the top is the governance, the industry, two sides, society, the different agent actors, and they all try to influence country policy and country governance from different approaches. Next one. So I tend to public diplomacy. Now, international political economy and culture is also connected, like culture's place in domestic political economy. Next one. So when we talk about international cultural affairs or international cultural diplomacy, there are three different labels. The first label is government international diplomacy, international organization, treaties, etc. The second layer would be what we call managed soft power and culture industry, casting, also different kinds of public economy market. Third one would be public relation, public exchange by public diplomacy and also all kinds of public exchanges. Next one. So we also try to make efforts in the civil society. We connect with East Asia, Europe, etc. Next one. We also facilitate the international cultural organization collaborate with the government. So we invite the minister to collaborate with the INCAT, European Network of Cultural Policy, next one. And also we network with Korean Culture and Tourism Institute, and also cross-strait 4-city cultural policy forum. Next one. We sign manifestos and we sign partnership MOUs with all different kinds of international organizations. Next one. And we also help the European Union office to with Taiwan's culture ministry. Next one. ICA was started only in 2019, trying to promote this computer content industry, creative content industry. Next one. So according to statistics, in 2021, the CCI employment has grown to about 2.4% of total population. In total, of 273,000 people working for this industry, composed of 4.4% GDP. It's getting bigger. However, if you look at the detail, Taiwan's CCI are actually very small scale. 85% of the CCI were small or micro enterprises, 2 or 3 people with investment for about, we say, some 160,000 US dollars, which is not big at all, right? So it's not like Korea, it's not like Japan. But they've got multinational cultural corporations functioning and state patrolling. Taiwan is using small and micro scale with, well, of course, the China is still working very hard to try to facilitate the investment also market. Next one. So I draw out this diagram here, taking government first, okay. So Ministry of Culture, and also the different entities here. On the right-hand side of the industry, here would be consumption. Here would be the civil society. So the idea is that the government is trying to facilitate the industry to reach international market. They try to absorb more consumption. They also try to collaborate with the civil society and to reach our international cultural organization. I put 2 question marks there to the side because to me, because of the particular reality, it's difficult for Taiwan to join any international organization formally. On the left-hand side, it's small scale. So it's difficult to have a global market. So what's more straightforward would be the bottom area. Next. So I try to conclude. What can we see for the past 10, 13 years? I think there was some breakthrough compared to the past 50 years. Yes, there's a strategic cultural policy design from the National Cultural Congress out and invested to 2020. So we have formed up a network ecology of cultural governments. There's a National Cultural Congress connecting the local and central government every 4 years. There are also newly devised cultural impact assessment mechanism. Public forums being held locally everywhere, every year. But there were limits as well, structural limits. We don't yet have a very systematic implementation of policy and the so-called evidence-based policy, which is still the policy is still very not yet studied. So we need a lot more data and research about Second, there are quite a lot of inter and intergovernmental cultural interactions, a little lack of coordination. A lot of cultural administration is still subject to the minister's cultural preference, and also all kinds of cultural organization. They have to adapt themselves to be able to sustain. Yeah, so it's important for civil cultural organization to be able to find professional skill, entrepreneurship, and management skill to be able to sustain. And we need new interfaces between culture and government, between culture and economy and enterprises, or ESG and SDGs. We need interfaces with also all kinds of interaction between different sectors of the industry. Next one. Final slides. Adrienne was asking me to say, well, is there something that we can, the other countries can help? Or let's say, what can organization here in America be able to also collaborate? To me, the first thing, of course, if you want to address culture subjectivity, I want to come to rely on itself first. And then we can talk about collaboration. For soft power, Taiwan, recognizing plurality. To me, really, culture is not a power. It's not a field that the state trying to show off its muscle. To me, culture is not for competition. Culture is really more about mutual understanding, sustainability, cooperation. So we need some sort of new alternatives that to emphasize on non-aggressive, non-dominating, multiple-centered, yet self-autonomous, sympathetic, logical, reciprocal, and civil-activated network of culture. Don't forget, Taiwan was the first Asian country to have a same-sex marriage legally. And also, it was the first Asian country to have a constitutional multi-nation state. And its president, female president, apologized formally to the Aboriginal people when he was president of the region. So I think that's important following diversity and also civil society. Finally, it's important, I still want to say, the civil society is trying to foster its capability to be able to engage positively in public sphere and public affairs. However, we need a more professional, sustainable management of programs, which I think a lot of American nonprofit organizations here will be able to help to facilitate knowledge and expertise in this aspect. And also, it is interesting for us to monitor whether this kind of civil-driven policy reform could last 10, 20 years. Thank you very much. I'll stop here. Next one. It's okay. It's just there's a QR code for you to scan for the booking. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for your presentation. I really learned so much, and I think we gave you such an impossible task trying to make you sketch out all of Taiwan's cultural policy while also giving recommendations, while also talking about how it relates to Taiwan and South Korea. So I think that you did a really amazing job of really pulling it. Really, thank you. So next we're going to go to Jerry Rawnsley, to the next speaker. So Gary Rawnsley is the head of the School of Social and Political Sciences and professor of public diplomacy at the University of Lincoln. He has worked at the University of Nottingham, where he was seconded to be the founding dean at the university's campus in China, and then worked at the universities of Leeds and Aberystwyth. Prior to joining Lincoln, Gary returned to the UNNC to be the dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. He also serves on the editorial and advisory boards of several journals, including the Hague Journal of Diplomacy and the Journal of Public Diplomacy, and serves as the book reviews editors for the International Journal of Taiwan Studies and the Journal of International Communities. Among Rawnsley's recent books are two co-edited volumes, the Research Handbook of Political Propaganda and the Routledge Handbook of Soft Power, which I own the first edition. I must say it's really an excellent book. I use it so much. The spine is completely cracked up because of all the times I open it up. So I really recommend that you check it out. Rawnsley has also been a visiting professor in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Australia, and is affiliated with the Guangdong University of Foreign Studies in China and the Adrienne University in Taichung, Taiwan. So, Gary, please take the floor.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. I hope you can hear me okay. The sound quality from your end is not that great, so I hope you can hear me okay. Certainly, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person. I love visiting Washington, D.C. so much. It's one of my favorite cities, and I hope I can get there again one day very soon. So I have structured my contribution around three core questions. One, what is soft power? Two, what are the sources of Taiwan's soft power? And three, how can Taiwan leverage its soft power capacity to overcome the constraints of the disabling environment in which it finds itself? So firstly, what is soft power? Well, there are as many definitions of soft power as there are scholars working on it. And I'm certainly still a soft power agnostic. And I'm still wrestling with the idea of what is soft power, because I'm challenged on an almost daily basis to rethink the concept and the terms and the practices. So it's a very fluid concept. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we do try to put these things into boxes. You know, as social scientists, we like things very neat and tidy. You know, this is soft power, that is hard power, this is smart power. When I think power is just power, and it's just the way that we use it that maybe is the important thing, rather than the label that we attach to it. But what I've done in my work over the past 30 years or so is try to return the concept of soft power to its political roots. As a political scientist, I've been very conscious of the way that it came out of political science and international relations. So my approach takes as its starting point the fact that soft power is generated in and by political cultures, institutions, and behaviors. I talk about the power of example, the way that states behave, for example, and I look to levels of accountability, transparency, and the capacity for correction embedded in social and political institutions. Moreover, soft power is most effective when generated inside civil society, as detachment from government agendas and behaviors offers soft power a level of credibility that might otherwise be absent. So I propose that soft power is determined by the presence of 5 key factors. 1, the legitimacy and credibility of institutions, actors, and processes, the efficacy of political culture. 2, the behavior of political actors at home and abroad, and the company they choose to keep. Soft power is generated by actions, and actions always speak louder than words. What a political actor does communicates a far more compelling narrative than what it says. 3, the levels of transparency, accountability, and the capacity for correction. In other words, we got it wrong, so let's fix it. 4, the free flow of information, ideas, genuine dialogue, debate, and dissension. As George Orwell famously wrote, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. The freedom to speak truth to power, to mobilize, and to protest without the fear of retribution is a marker of soft power. And 5, the capacity for building networks for collaboration and association, especially in civil society, the kind of civil activated participating cultures that Dr. Liu has described in his presentation just now. Note that I've not included in the list any mention of culture or cultural products, which I think is too often foregrounded in discussions of soft power. And by that, I mean that a lot of the literature on soft power looks at the cultural products and outputs. You know, they look at the films, the film festivals, and the cultural products themselves. And I think that what Dr. Liu did in his presentation was highlight the connection between culture, governance, soft power, civil society. And I think that that's a level of engagement that is often missing, I think, in the literature. Cultural products can help measure familiarity and popularity, and thus be a starting point in understanding soft power. I've often written that though the cultural industries are often at the cultural industries are often at the forefront of speaking truth to power and demonstrating practicing the list of the soft power markers that I've identified already. 2 further points to note. This list suggests that Taiwan, that soft power is a natural byproduct from the political arrangements and behavior of political actors. Therefore, I suggest that it is not possible to design a soft power strategy, and any attempt to strategize soft power reveals misunderstanding of what it actually is and how it's generated. You know, I've often spoken with governments around the world, and I've spoken with MOFA in Taiwan, where I've said, you know, do you practice soft power? And yes, but we don't really know what it is. We just know we need to be doing it. And they're kind of focusing on the soft power part rather than everything else that goes into making and generating soft power. Governments need to focus on governing in an ethical and transparent way and let the public diplomacy mechanisms communicate the soft power narratives. This also means taking no notice of the plethora of terrible soft power rankings that think it is possible to measure soft power via quantitative methods, and which reach an erroneous conclusion that nations and governments are somehow in a beauty pageant, you know, who's up, who's down, and are perhaps in some kind of soft power competition. And 2, at the end of the day, the power of soft power lies not with governments or the cultural industries or other institutions tasked with generating or communicating it. Rather, the power resides in public opinion, which decides how to interpret the narratives, whether to accept and internalize the behaviors of governments and public diplomacy programs. And again, I think that the audience's power in soft power is too often neglected in a lot of the literature, which still focuses on the actors generating and communicating soft power and not enough on the audiences who have to respond to those soft power messages. So turning to Taiwan specifically, I think that the list I've provided gives a very clear indication of the sources of Taiwan's soft power. It is generated by Taiwan's commitment to a liberal, democratic political culture and values. I don't need to go into a lot of detail here. I'm sure everybody in the room is very familiar with Taiwan's democratization and the consolidation of democracy. But rather, I highlight a few points here. Firstly, the peaceful and successful transfer of political power between parties. Taiwan's electoral culture is incredibly polarized, and can be incredibly vicious at times. But since the first fully open presidential election of 1996, the transfer of power between parties has not been contested, and the legitimacy of the election process or the outcome has not been challenged. After all, Taiwan is about to go through another presidential election and possibly the fourth transfer of power since 1996. This is a clear contrast with Beijing, where in 2018, President Xi Jinping abandoned the constitutional stipulation that the president could not serve more than 2 terms. These soft power narratives serve Taiwan very well indeed. 2, Taiwan's vibrant media space and acceptance of views and opinions that challenge political authority and what may be considered core values. And anybody like me who has spent time watching and monitoring Taiwan's vibrant media space, boy, do you know how vibrant it is and how polarized and vicious it can be at times. That's a marker of democracy, I think. 3, something that Dr. Liu already touched upon, the way that Taiwan has led in Asia on LGBTQ rights and issues. This is a very powerful narrative, and I think Taiwan could do more in this regard. And to be fair, they took a lot of persuading. The government agencies tasked with communicating Taiwan's public diplomacy took a lot of persuading to use this as a theme. And when I spoke with members of the old GIO, and which became part of MOFA, they were very reluctant to highlight this issue. And so this is one of those soft power markers that needs to be made much more of. 4, a legislature with one of the highest female representations in the world. 5, the diversity and levels of autonomy of Taiwan's civil society. 6, greater attention to the rights of and problems of indigenous communities and their greater representation. And finally, most recently, of course, the management of COVID-19, which was a clear contrast with the very intrusive way the government on the other side of the Taiwan Strait decided to deal with the pandemic, and certainly with more sustained success. And having lived in China during the pandemic campaign, during the pandemic, I know full well how China dealt with it. I had to manage this on a daily basis, so I'm very familiar with the way that China decided to manage COVID. It is instructive that when I speak with government officials and MOFA officers from Taiwan, they rarely, if ever, utter the phrase soft power. This is a stark contrast with interviewees in similar positions representing other countries, including the PRC. Now, while I do not necessarily think that this is a criticism, as I say, after all, so few of those in government who use the term soft power know what it really is or how it works. But it does suggest that perhaps soft power is not as prominent in Taiwan as a narrative as perhaps it should be. What is to be done? Well, in my past research, I have claimed that Taiwan has soft power, but no public diplomacy, while China has a lot of public diplomacy, but no soft power. My view on China remains the same. In fact, watching the PRC slide into ever greater levels of authoritarianism, my view has hardened. And I see any soft power capacity that China might have slipping away very, very quickly indeed. On the other hand, I am pleased to say that Taiwan's public diplomacy, the way that it communicates Taiwan's substantial soft power capacity, has improved, particularly during the Tsai Ing-wen presidency. But there is still some way to go. Taiwan was late to the party, even behind the PRC, but has finally embraced the opportunities of the social media environment, and now has a far more nuanced understanding of how to communicate soft power narratives in the digital age. And I could tell you stories that will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The discussions that I had with MOFA and GIO about their understanding and use of digital platforms before the Tsai Ing-wen presidency. I note in particular the creation of Taiwan Plus, available as an app in English and is a valuable source of Taiwan-related news and information. But even today, a coherent strategy is absent that might connect Taiwan's soft power with its public and cultural diplomacy programs. Taiwan operates with a confused institutional architecture, particularly with the merger of the GIO into MOFA, which only exacerbated the problems and echoes the problems facing US public diplomacy when USIA was abolished and was merged into the State Department. But we would do well to ask, so what? Is Taiwan's new public diplomacy energy moving the needle of public opinion in an international political system that marginalizes it? Well, the Pew Research Center's research on how public opinion in 24 countries views Taiwan, published on the 11th of August, so just a few days ago, gives, I think, cause for optimism. But at the same time, it is something of a mixed bag and cautions Taiwan against complacency. The two standouts for me are as follows. One, in 15 countries surveyed, 1/4 of more respondents offer no opinion about Taiwan. Two, opinions about Taiwan are tied to opinions about China. These findings, I think, present opportunities. If 25% of respondents do not know enough to offer an opinion about Taiwan, that means 75% do. This indicates that Taiwan is doing something right in reaching majorities in key nation states. However, I suggest that Taiwan does not really need to communicate with popular opinion in most of the countries surveyed. Rather, it is more important and effective to engage with those who are in positions to influence popular and political opinion. I would call these influencers, but I know that this now has a different meaning, and I don't want to give anybody the idea that you just dance on TikTok and it's going to influence you about Taiwan. But this is how most successful propaganda works. And for states like Taiwan that are not especially familiar to public opinion, it is the most efficient and strategic method of communication. Communicate with journalists, with teachers, with politicians, those who are in a position to influence others in society. If opinions about Taiwan are connected to opinions about China, it means audiences may be able to identify substantial differences between the two. Despite the lack of formal diplomatic relations with most nation states, a positive opinion about Taiwan prevails. I suggest that further progress is possible if Taiwan can communicate its own soft power with soft power capacity without referring to the PRC. The actions of the government in Beijing are disrupting its own messaging and are driving global public opinion against China. Taiwan does not always have to communicate that it is not the PRC in order for international audiences to get the message. If Taiwan avoids China-focused narratives in its own strategic communications, and basing it on the soft power narratives I've already highlighted, it will confirm that Taiwan is confident in its own liberal democratic system. Two, show that there is more to Taiwan than its relations with China. And three, move away from a defensive posture that has characterized Taiwan's public diplomacy, certainly before Tsai Ing-wen's presidency. If your communication is always reacting to messages from Beijing, what Taiwan is doing is simply amplifying the original message and drawing even further attention to it and making it more important than it needs to be. Taiwan needs to have more confidence in its own messaging. I also suggest taking no notice of soft power rankings that try to measure the impact of soft power via quantitative measures. So despite the positive picture painted by the Pew Opinion Survey, this is certainly no time for complacency. Only 12 of the UN's 193 member states recognize Taiwan, and it is shameful that no one using the ROC's passport as ID can enter the United Nations or any of its organizations. Despite Taiwan leading the way in Asia on how COVID was managed, it remains outside the World Health Organization and the World Health Assembly. More worrying is the growing belligerence in an increasingly nationalist PRC at a time when China's economy is faltering. The legitimacy of the CCP is based on delivery. The time for Taiwan to worry is not when the government in Zhongnanhai feels secure, but rather when it doesn't. Moreover, there is, of course, the uncertainty as we head towards another presidential election in the US, and that may also be a cause for concern. We need to be realistic and acknowledge that soft power is not going to change Taiwan's international situation. Taiwan continues to exist in what we call a disabling environment, in which factors other than its democratic system and shared values determine Taiwan's position in the international system. What Taiwan needs to do is to continue to build its democratic system and communicate the political and social values that have made Taiwan a robust and successful liberal democracy, its soft power, maintaining relations with those nation states that share Taiwan's core ideals and principles. While Taiwan now has a stronger presence in international information and communication spaces, it needs to use it to maximize the projection of its soft power capacity. Instead of engaging with critical and often hostile narratives from the mainland, leaving Taiwan looking defensive, a stronger focus on telling Taiwan's story to the world, emphasizing Taiwan's democratic credentials and its rich cultural heritage, would let audiences draw their own conclusions about Taiwan and the regime on the other side of the strait. And I'll conclude there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your talk. I'm sad to hear that you can't hear us very well, but we were able to hear you perfectly. So thank you so much. I think you touched on so many important themes, and as someone who I myself have a cultural studies background, defining culture is always one of the the biggest headaches when I was studying. So I'm glad to hear you say that we need to try to break things out of the box. So thank you so much. We'll now turn to our last speaker. So Irene Wu. Irene Wu is an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, where she teaches classes on global politics, history, and regulation of communications technology. Most recent book, Forging Trust Communities, How Technology Changes Politics, tells the story of how activists and governments around the world use new tech today to get people to work together, from the telegraph to social media. She is also the author of From Iron Fist to Invisible Hand, The Uneven Path of Telecommunications Policy Reform in China. And Dr. Wu began teaching at Georgetown University in Communications, Culture, and Technology Master's Program in 2007. So yes, please.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for inviting me to speak here at Global Taiwan Institute. Let's forward so much for your feedback questions. So my presentation is on measuring soft power in the international system, and I have to promise Mr. Rawnsley that I'm right on falling as the measurement attempts are. In addition to teaching at Georgetown, I'm also an economist in the Federal Communications Commission. But this research that I'm going to talk about today is separate from mine, and certainly does not reflect the views of that one agency or office there. So, okay, all right. So what I'm going to do today is just talk through this method for measuring soft power that I've developed over the last several years. And after I talk about the model, then I will bring in some statistics that are available for Taiwan, and then I'll conclude this questions. First of all, in thinking of soft power I think of soft power as when a country is able to persuade others to its point of view and not coerce them to its point of view. And so if you think about when the Canadians need help, well, Americans help them. We help them. The more that Americans think of Canadians as we, rather than as they, the more likely we are to extend our assistance, right? To stand in solidarity. And so from that perspective, I think it's better to think of soft power, not of one country having soft power over another, sort of projection of power, but rather to think of this as soft power relationships. And when you have soft power relationships, countries have soft power relationships with each other, you have to keep in mind that that relationship is mutually influential. And if we think of soft power as getting to be and with, then it's possible in science research to tap into very rich veins of research related to social integration, related to collective action, and related to methods for building trust and response. When we look at collective action, scholars, the American repertoire such as talk about how in collective action, people are willing to work for the collective good and even to sacrifice their own self-interest to work for that collective good. If the members of that group have context and believe that in the long term, the community good is more important than interest. And so there's a long and rich history of this. And also, this builds on another vein of research in political science. Led by Eleanor Ostrom and her colleagues. She is the Nobel Prize winner in economics, where she studied groups of people who have to share common resources. For example, sharing water. How do they develop, even if they're strangers, how do they develop trust over time? Two of the major preconditions is communication and opportunities for reciprocity. And built up over time, even strangers can develop trust and cooperation among each other. So if we build all these literatures, collective action, social capital, trust and reciprocity, then we might expand this to the community of international relations and see that more social interactions among countries will increase the likelihood of. And this is the basis for building my soft power grid, which is an effort to measure soft power, because at least in the policy environment in which I work, things that are measured tend to get more support. Policy support, financial support, moral support. So the absence of a good soft power measure really means that not as much attention and resources are to it. So I'm trying to influence the situation. And so I developed a soft power rubric, which is what you see at the top. And us professors, we use rubrics when we grade students. So this is why that popped in my mind. It's not necessarily all quantitative, but it does establish a framework for assessment. And in thinking about when a person has an interest in a foreign country, are there any observable activities that count to develop an assessment of the level of that interest? This is also an approach that is used to measure economic size. So when we think of size of the economy, we usually think of the gross domestic product. And of course, it's a very useful proxy for the economy. But actually, gross domestic product refers to measuring something very, very specific. That's economic production has a dollar value to it. And that's because everything that has a dollar value to it can be added up together so that you can get a big picture of the size of economic production. But in fact, there are many kinds of economic production that don't get a dollar value, that are not included in the GDP. And we just sort of go along with that because it's so useful to have the GDP. We just use it in recognition of its flaws. So with the soft power movement, I realized that the simplification has some detriments and some problems with it, but the advantage of being able to get a big picture of subpar relationships between these countries, I hope outweighs the disadvantages. So when we think of a person's interest in a foreign country, how can we observe that? One easy way would be if that person watches a movie from that country. I am taking the audience point of view here, not the producer point of view. So, but if a person watches a movie, that is evidence of interest, right? But that's a very small level of interest, just a little bit of time, maybe the price of the ticket. A bigger commitment is the fact that person visits the country. So that is, a little bit more time, a little bit more investment of money into expressing an interest. A huge commitment would be to study abroad. Of course, there is data, a lot of data on foreign students enrolled in universities for a degree, very big investment. And even the biggest investment perhaps is immigration. If you really are interested in another country, if you pick up with your family there, then that is evidence of attraction, right? Okay, so that's the groundwork for some. I'm going to spend the next couple of slides just looking at the data for Taiwan. Next slide is on immigration. I have here at the top a graph of the number of immigrants to Taiwan, 2013 to 2022. And, in 2022, there are approaching 800,000 immigrants living in Taiwan. And in the graph below, you can see the top 5 countries of origin. Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines are the largest communities, and they're all from Southeast Asia. Right? I am not an expert on immigration in Taiwan, and I would love to learn more. So if anybody would like to be in touch with me after this, I would love to. The next slide is non-citizen students enrolled in degree programs in Taiwan universities. Data years 2007 to 20. To walk you through what's on this graph. First of all, you can see as of 2022, Taiwan's approaching 70,000 students, foreign students in its universities, the vast majority of which, in that color red, are from other countries other than Hong Kong, Macau, and maybe China. Right? And then in the other two blocks there in green, those are the number of students from Hong Kong and Macau, and the blue, the number of students from mainland China. This is highly affected by political tensions across the strait and by policies allowing or not allowing students to. The next slide is foreign visitors. This is a slide that shows that in in 2020, for the pandemic, foreign visitors to Taiwan reached about 12 million. And the breakout that I have before 2017 is similar to the students. The section in red are visitors other than those from Hong Kong, Macau, and China. And then in green, it's visitors from Hong Kong and Macau, and blue, the visitors from mainland China. And for the last remaining years, 2017 to 2020, I simply don't have the breakout yet. But you can see that is the trajectories. All right, next slide. I put Taiwan's data into context with some neighboring countries. When I developed the rubric, I relied mostly on nations data, almost entirely on nations data. And so for the other countries, those must come from the United Nations, and the benefit of that data has been harmonized. Taiwan, the data that I just showed you is from Taiwan government, those statistical agencies. And so I have each of the 3 series on this page, and then I have the final subpar ranking on the right. So let me just walk you through what I did. On the upper left, for immigrants, Taiwan would rank between 64 and 65 out of a list of 99 countries in terms of number of immigrants living in the society as of 20. In terms of students, in 2019, Taiwan would rank between 19 and 20 in terms out of 99 countries having data here. It's 2019. And then in terms of foreign visitors, Taiwan ranks between 38 and 39 for data 2019. All of this is public data. You can look it up yourself. And then what I did in the soft power ranking is I added the 3 series ranks. Right, so I added A, B, and C. And then for Taiwan, that rank is between 32 and 34. Total number of 99 countries data. So the advantage of the soft power rubric is that it's extremely simple. All the data are public. I'm not using any fancy algorithms that are proprietary. Everything is out there in the public domain. The weakness of the soft power rubric, I recognize, also is behind every single one of these countries. If you look at the number of immigrants to Japan at 2.8 million, there's a whole book that could be written about what is behind that number. The forces that bring immigrants in, forces that send immigrants out, history of policy, history of the region. So that is the weakness. I do see soft power rubric as a way of understanding soft power relationships between countries. It's a tool that makes it possible to compare countries, to compare regions, make studies over time, but it is only the beginning of an investigation. So the start of questions, certainly not the answer. And the other thing that has been left out in my presentation, because I have only just a few minutes, is that I stated at the beginning, I think of these power as relationships, and I only looked at the relationship for this Taiwan data going in one direction. There is a whole other set of data of looking at people from Taiwan going up. And I think that's also a very important part of assessing soft power relationships. That's just to give up time. So the final slide, if you're interested in learning more, I have these publications where I go into theory a little bit more and also to the multi-directionality of soft power rubric. And I welcome.
Thank you so much, Irene. I think that was a great presentation to round out everything. Like you said, it is still important to measure things just for the sake of getting funding and helping out. So, as someone that constantly gets the question, but how do you know this is important? I can see that there's this benefit to trying to make up some sort of measurement system to prove other people and kind of get some more support behind it. So we will be going into questions shortly. So for our viewers in the audience and viewers online, start to think of what question you want to ask. As the moderator's prerogative, I will be asking one question, which I would like all of our panelists to answer. But yeah, for everyone online, then I will turn the question time over to you. I have already gotten a few questions from our online audience, so very excited. So the question that I would like to pose to the panel is, so we've been talking a lot about the government's role and how can we amplify soft power without legitimizing these types of efforts. Of course, Taiwan is a very vibrant democracy, and we don't want to undermine that with the government taking too much of a heavy hand towards this type of promotion of soft power. So I would like to ask each of our panelists, what do you think the government could do either on Taiwan's side or on the US side in order to help improve promotion of soft powers between the US and Taiwan? So what do you think the government can do, and what do you have any questions to the government's interaction with trying to help in this way? So basically, how much should the government be involved and what should they do? So may I turn that over to you, Christian?
Yes. Actually, I'm thinking of using one of the slides. Thank you. It's the very first one after I finished. Maybe.
Do you want? Oh, I remember which one.
Yeah.
Well, I think what is most important, government policy point of view, is that if a government wants to promote soft power, then the important thing is to open up and support more opportunities for people exchanges, in whatever form it might be, and in whatever area that is strength for that society. So when I look at the situation of various countries over time, some countries are great at one particular thing, and that's what we're interested in, and I build on. It's not something that can be easily forced. Definitely, it's have a colleague, Professor Gallarati, who talks about soft disempowerment. It is possible that by taking too much of an advertising or marketing approach, that you would actually become productive. So you just have to see what foreigners are attracted to. And I think also you can see my bias in developing soft power is that I do think that countries that are open to foreigners have a much stronger platform than soft power. If foreigners have no opportunity to learn about your society, then it's almost impossible. And that's either foreigners coming into the society or people from your society. Place.
Yes, what the government is going to do. Just trying to use this slide here. Because the upper axis here, there are four quadrants. Right? Upper would be the state, okay. The bottom would be civil society and dynamism. Right hand side is very expertise and common sense. So for conventional diplomacy or public diplomacy, we were expecting the state to do a lot of things, the so-called T plus axis. Meaning what we are having here, public diplomacy or national construction, national interest, data, image building, national treaties of organization, soft power, just mentioned a bit, how to export your output, counter branding, word attraction, and counter exchange and counter intermediary level. Whilst in the bottom axis here, class here, is what the civil society expect. We're talking about cultural relation and cultural exchanges. We're looking more at the vertical belonging and identity of cultural community. We talk more about everyday interaction and emotional exchange of artists and cultural practitioners. We talk about creative and aesthetic expression and dialogue of individual artists and cultural practice. Right? We have more diverse international art, festival expression and consumption, self-reflections, civil art, groups, communications, and network of cultural advocacy, even resistance or rebellion. Right? So this from the civil society side. So normally we're looking at this kind of entangle between the state and civil society. It would be naive to say we don't need the state. But the citizens, the civil society want to have it's self-autonomous. It's self-facilitated role. So normally we find them somewhere in between. So I give you some of the diagrams there, and I give you again 2 question marks there. I don't think the government will be able to do a lot in terms of real international organization. I mean, diplomatic, official organization like UNESCO, if safe, Taiwan cannot join, and due to the reality, if in the future it's possible, of course, we will come up. I'd also try to say that we do not want the government to intervene very much in terms of the market industry. It's good to facilitate it, but we don't want the heavy capital. So if you ask me what the government can do, I would say the government should try to facilitate civil society. Government should try its best to facilitate the professional expertise, the networking, platform, connections of civil groups and other international networking, which is very important, and also facilitate and fostering the capability for civil groups. And first in the United States, I think, as I just mentioned, a lot of, for instance, project impact assessment schemes, and also the way that art foundation, couple foundations, collaborate with enterprises and trying to have so develop more material powerful sectors which are based on autonomy on content production. So to do values. I think that's probably the way to go. And so if the civil society of Taiwan could connect more robustly with the international civil society, then government then does not need to do too much of it. Hopefully, there are a lot of Taiwan cultural offices and also Taiwan academies here and there. I think there are 16 only comparing to Asian Institute or comparing to Korean Institute and Gold Institute, etc. Taiwan, 16 is not many. But still, when I had a chance previous years, in council to Global office in the Ministry of Culture, we're discussing about what should be 16 offices for academics. From our some sort of search that there was just also trying to discuss about. So eventually, what my own opinion is say, well, we don't really want clear strategy. It's what we want diverse voices. So it's probably good to have NDPB, to have the Cultural Exchange Foundation, which would be able to coordinate also the different versions of academic and cultural offices. It could be run by civil society organizations and professionals here and there, for plastic development, etc. So that's sort of different from the convention to the council, and maybe they get more whatever authority in the something. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that what you're talking about in terms of facilitating society is so important. Gary, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, definitely. Three things to say in response to this. In terms of what the government can do in terms of soft power, I would say as little as possible, please. I mean, I certainly echo Dr. Liu that, you know, soft power is best generated in civil society, far away from government agendas, and the best thing that the government can do is to stay as far away as possible. and facilitating civil society, making sure that it's tolerated, it's safe, etc., but in terms of the activities, the promotions, stay far away from it indeed. I would say that what the government should be doing is therefore all the things that I said in my own presentation, which is about making sure that they're continuing to govern in a democratic way, in the best interests of the people, helping vulnerable people in society, etc. Government shouldn't be focusing on image. Government shouldn't be doing things because it makes them look good abroad. Government should be governing because they want to govern for the right reasons for the people that they look after. And then the public diplomacy then communicates those kind of narratives. I would say the second thing is that the government can do is to continue to build its public diplomacy mechanisms and make sure that public diplomats are communicating those soft power narratives in taking into account local contexts, of course. The first rule of public diplomacy is to listen. So making sure that you are tailoring your public diplomacy programs and making sure that all diplomats understand that they are now public diplomats. You know, the days when an embassy was, you know, you had people who were dealing with politics, you had people dealing with economics, you had the press office, those days are gone. Everybody in an embassy is now a public diplomat and has to know how to communicate. I remember years ago, I asked for an interview with the press officer in the Taipei representative office in London, and he didn't want to talk to me because he was shy. And I thought that's a very strange thing for a press officer to say, but luckily we've moved away from that now. But also when I used to look at the curriculum for the programs to train diplomats, you know, they would spend far more time understanding wine. They would spend far more time understanding the etiquettes of fine dining than they would on communication and public diplomacy, which took up a matter of, you know, a couple of hours in the curriculum. Those days have to be far away from us. Public diplomacy is now front and central to every diplomat's job, wherever they are in the world. The third thing I would say is that the government can do much more to think about how to measure the soft power, the kind of things that our third speaker was discussing, but also thinking more about qualitative, I think, measures of its soft power. You know, when I do talk to diplomats around the world, not just from Taiwan, but in other places, they're very proud of the numbers of people who go see a concert or the numbers of people tuning into a TV program or have attended a food festival. But that doesn't tell us anything. You know, that doesn't tell us about the emotional response. It doesn't tell us anything about attitudes, opinions, and behaviors of people. And I think that we have to do much more to understand how audiences are engaging with the kind of cultural products or the soft power narratives that are coming from Taiwan, understanding how this is going to change their behavior and their opinions, and not just relying on you know, bums on seats as a measure of soft power success. So building in more qualitative as much as quantitative, I think, measures for understanding soft power success.
Thank you so much, Gary. I think you're right that, you know, qualitative measures are definitely also important as well. Now that we're turning over to the Q&A, I'd like to start with one question from online, and then we'll turn to our audience here. So our first question is from Alejandro online, who is at La University in Guatemala. He is interested in Taiwan's cultural policy and how it relates to Taiwan's diplomatic allies. So is engagement different with non-official partners or allies? Also, how can cultural policy help retain and deepen relations at official and civil society levels with remaining diplomatic allies such as Guatemala and Paraguay? Jerry, do you want to take it?
Yes, thank you. as government still has got to do something. Even though we don't want it to intervene too much, but still, it's just they're doing the job and responsibility to, let's say, to facilitate or to foster cultural right of different societies and citizens, and also its partners. So I believe there are already quite a lot of program schemes being set up in the Ministry of Culture, not only Ministry of Culture, but Ministry of Education. Also, I see there are foreign, overseas Chinese, overseas Taiwanese. So they have already established quite a lot of scheme of future exchanges, scholarships. So ability grant to help civil society to be able to connect, to have dialogue, so devise exploration program, etc. projects as well. So I think it's there. It's not only with South American or Central American countries, Southeast Asia, European countries, etc. So we got to repeat that. So but just hopefully they will continue doing all those things. Yes. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience? The mic is fine. If you could state your name and affiliation. And
I am an intelligence analyst and a former diplomat. I didn't really share Professor Rawnsley's skepticism about cultural product. 90% of Shen Yun's soft diplomacy is bound out with soft diplomacy to Shen Yun. And you look at the success of anime and manga from Japan, and you go to Korea and look at the success of K-pop and Minhwa, which is their own. And there is nothing more popular in Central Asia and North Korea than the dramas that are made in South Korea. So these things are the point of the spear for soft power. And I look at Taiwan and I don't see so much. So I've got to ask, should policy and internal forces in Taiwan work a little harder to generate these cultural products so that they too can have a point to their spear? Even if it's something as simple as translating their own excellent comic books into Japanese or Korean.
Is that one of the panelists that would like to take that?
Everything. Yes, I do agree. Cultural products make impact, influence, and also make your culture known to other people. But there are many facets of such cultural export and output. I've seen quite a lot of K-pop. But if you ask Korean friends, we're not necessarily happy with that. Whether that is natural or representative Korean content or something more like marketized, specialized production. If we are talking about diplomacy in political sense, say that's some sort of branding and production and construction, and then not matter. But if not, then you go back to civil society again. If I would say, if Korean or coffee does not receive so much state control and investment in that, and they will be able to produce something that is naturally produced by the country industry. Not that I I'll say, oh, it's good. But if there's something heavily sponsored and intentional, then I don't see that kind of real spontaneous production of everyday life. So I think in Taiwan, it's not that people are not creating content. Civil society are working very hard to create its own project content. It's just not enormous. There wasn't so much capital marketing. And there wasn't not so the big corporation would be able to use in the market tools to be able to make it be known by global market. Even though I'll say now still we still wish that lots of production content dealing with social issues, human concerns, cultural issues, public concerns for immigrants who live in Taiwan and being produced as documentary dramas, etc. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And then again, you're facing whether you want to translate that or you want to make it Englished, right? So all those issues must there. That's probably quite many say, but the other important facet of to say is that if you want to have global market and global capital investing in, you're looking at also whether cultural producers have been good enough working conditions, working environment, welfare. First, I'm saying, if you are looking at national cultural production and influence and impact, first instead of working condition and environment, domestic industry, that's not going to last long. And that's the scenario here in Taiwan currently. So I will not say Taiwanese people do not want their country to be known, but we do not want it to be dominated by market or state. We want it to be spontaneous, global, or mutual understanding. If that's not happening, because we do not have heavy capital and state intervention, then that's fine.
It's interesting that you mentioned anime, which is the larger manga culture of Japan. Manga culture in Japan is a counterculture movement. And so it's a culture that's promoted by the Japanese. It's kabuki, it's those are not the things that foreigners love most, right? It's really the counterculture manga that has taken a commercial hold. And you can see this in American culture as well. One of our major cultural exports is rock and roll, a very pointedly counterculture. So the idea that diplomats can, at the right moment, harness the counterculture movement and export that abroad is really, a little bit self-contradictory. So I think that's what these professors who specialize in culture. It's really, K-pop is serving a Korean society culture. And it's very robust. And then it also is exported. It's not something that, it's just feeding global and international. And I think in looking at television production and soap operas and films that are developed around the world, it's not government support that makes these things global. It's a very strong, vibrant domestic market. And sometimes in spite of government diplomacy, these are successful. That is more common.
Thank you so much for that comment as well. I think we're already going over time, so I'm sorry to everyone. Gary, I did want to give you an opportunity to reply if you wanted to send, I think,
yes.
Comment.
If I may, yeah, just I don't want to give the impression that I completely discount culture as being irrelevant to any of this. I've written a lot about culture and cultural diplomacy, cultural relations. I think that cultural products are important because they help to familiarize audiences with a particular society, history, context, etc. I think what is important for me as a political scientist is to say, well, what's next? What are the tangible outcomes from that engagement with the cultural product? So, for example, Hallyu, the Korean wave, you might get audiences, young audiences around the world going to concerts by Blackpink or BTS, and I hope you're all very impressed that I know those. And that's great, but the question for me is, so what? What's the next step from this? If they're going to see this as entertainment and have a good time and celebrate, Korean music, that's brilliant. But in terms of soft power, what's next? How are they engaging? How is this going to maybe further engage their understanding of Korea or their interest in Korea, or when they get older, their business with Korea? So I think this is why I also say that there needs to be some more qualitative research around these things. But I do share the ideas of the other two panelists, is that when I've written about Hallyu, it hasn't been about so much as the Korean products themselves. It's about the social infrastructure that has allowed that industry to develop so quickly, so successfully. That's the marker of Korean soft power. The fact that you have these cultural industries with huge investment, allowing such creativity, collaboration, all of these things, that's where the soft power in Hallyu lies. It's not in the export of these products around the world. It's the story it's telling about Korea's commitment to the cultural industries and the inspiration and creativity in Korea. That's, for me, is the important thing.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very important distinction, and definitely it ties into what the government could be doing to help these industries develop. So maybe in terms of programs or training schemes and funding as well. So I think that that's also very important. Since we've already gone over time, I'm very sorry to everyone. I'll just end the event here. But please feel free to come up and ask our panelists additional questions if you have other comments. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Global Taiwan Institute. My name is Russell Chow. I am the executive director here at GTI. GTI is a 501c3 think tank dedicated exclusively to Taiwan policy research and related programs. Our mission is to enhance the relationship between the United States and Taiwan with the world by contributing to a more informed discussion about Taiwan and its people. In pursuit of that mission, we undertake several major programs. They include our bi-weekly Global